Counting down to 12 and we'll start then. All right, thank you.
Are you just a check? Are you able to see my screen here? All right.
Yes, I am seeing Island Growers Caribbean. Yep.
Okay,
Positive.
great.
Okay. Thanks. Bye.
All right, we'll see you in half an hour then.
No, we're starting in a few seconds. It's 12
Oh,
o'clock Eastern time. So,
okay. Sorry, I thought that we were starting at 12:30. This was a test. All right.
okay, good. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for another episode in our Preparing for the 2025 Caribbean Hurricane Season webinar series. My name is Denise Murillo, Senior Project Officer at the CARICOM Secretariat, and I will be your moderator for today's session. This webinar is brought to you through the collaboration of key regional partners, the CARICOM Secretariat, the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency, CDEMA, the Caribbean Agriculture Health and Food Safety Agency, CASA, the Caribbean Agriculture Research and Development Institute, CARDI, the Caribbean Regional Fisheries Mechanism, CRFM, and the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, FAO, and the International Institute for Cooperation on Agriculture, IICA. Our goal today is to equip you with practical strategies that can be incorporated into your disaster preparedness plans, specifically for crop production in open fields and protected systems. In our previous session, you heard of practical methods and ways you could manage on-farm and sea assets for the upcoming hurricane season and explore the valuable role agricultural insurance can help in risk reduction. Today, we continue that conversation, and we encourage you to submit your questions, those online, and we will try our best to address them as the time permits, as we have 1 hour. And each panel has about 5 to 7 minutes, and we should have time for questions and answers. So please have your questions handy, and you can submit them for that segment. We will take them and have the panelists respond. So let's get started. Ms. Deandra, Rowe is the managing director of Abbey Garden Farms. In 2023, she's a CARICOM Youth Farmer of the Year as well. Ms. Rowe, please tell us. Ms. Rowe, you can go ahead and tell us more about preparing for the hurricane season and what you've done, what we can do. All right. Well, there seems to be some difficulty, some technical difficulty. Then can I then move to our next speaker, Mr. Ralph Burkhoff from the Aquimi Renewables Island Growers Caribbean. He's a leader in greenhouse construction. So we give him the time now as he shares with us today.
Okay, thanks, Denise. Okay, well, I guess this topic is obviously very near and dear to our heart. It's actually kind of the basis of a lot of what our business model is about. We are obviously focused on controlled environment, agriculture, greenhouse systems, and hydroponic systems. The key to getting this started 5 or 6 years ago was to align ourselves with various greenhouse system manufacturers that could produce a system that was hurricane resistant. We could not attract investors or insure our farms without this level of engineering. So I'd like to just start off with a quick video if I could, and hopefully you can all see this and hear this. Let me know you can hear it.
We're not hearing, but we're seeing the video.
You're not hearing it? Okay.
No, we're not hearing it.
Or get washed away by flood waters.
We heard something just now. Heard a bit of the audio, but it went out already.
Okay, so I guess I hope you got the gist of that. We are not only looking, I mean, we're talking about disaster preparedness, and we're not only looking at hurricane risk in our case. We are looking at all risk factors. I'm just going to take you quickly through this, but we have to be cognizant not just of hurricane risk. Obviously, that's the dominant one, but we also have to design and engineer our systems to be resistant to drought, to flooding, to earthquakes and seismic activity, as well as volcanic ash fallout. So we are trying to focus on substituting imported crops. So a lot of the fresh produce that we import into the region are basically crops that really can't be grown in this subtropical zone. They're temperate zone crops, cold weather crops. We have to create an artificial environment for them to grow adequately and to be able to produce enough. And it all starts with the infrastructure. So in our case, we have two different greenhouse systems that we use, and they're engineered to very high wind load standards. And then the idea being that we want to be able to grow every day of the year. So this is our sprung system. This is some photos from our Antigua farm that's currently being finished construction and will go into operation in a couple of months. So this system is engineered up to 175-mile-an-hour wind loads. It has dynamic cooling, and we use these systems for high-value crops like berry fruits and mushroom production, which require a very dynamic environmental control system. Also, when we design these systems, the foundation systems are raised. They're also protected against flooding. So the base that we have, graded systems outside.
Hi.
Protected against ash fallout as well. We also use this system. This is a naturally aspirated tropical greenhouse system. It's rated to 140-mile-an-hour wind loads while closed, but when you can open up the walls and the roof, and it can be protected against higher wind loads. So we use these as greenhouse for greens and vine crop systems. They have retractable roof systems, automated shade screens, integrated insect screens, and importantly, these are commercially insurable. So our greenhouses are some of the first greenhouses insured in the region. This system comes with a 5-year warranty, the sprung with a 10. So they're fully warranted by the manufacturer as well. The idea being that we can grow all year. Obviously, we also design in redundant energy supply and water supply, which are critical to hydroponic production systems. All right, so that's just a quick overview of what we're doing at Island Growers, and happy to answer any more questions.
Thank you so much, Ralph. Just before we take, I don't see any questions as yet, but I would want us to go to Miss Rowe. Are you online? All right, so let's now, I'd like to call then for us to hear some perspective from Cardi, Mr. Jackson. You can take us, you could now lead
Yes.
the way. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So just let me know if you are seeing my screen.
Not as yet.
Okay, just one moment, please. Let me just go back to share. Instead of it, sorry for that. Okay, so let me share my screen now. This. Right, so you are seeing my screen?
Yes, we are.
Okay. All right, so let me start off by saying a pleasant good afternoon to each and everyone. Hello?
Yes, good afternoon. Can you please put it in a slide view? We will be able to see it fully, if you can, please.
Slide view. Just one moment, please. Just one moment, because this is a slide view.
It's normally in the bottom left. I believe there's an icon.
The bottom left.
Yes, there's a little
Okay,
icon.
right. Okay. Better there?
I'm not seeing it as yet, but it's processing, I believe. We'll see it in a few.
Let me know when you have it, when you can see there.
Okay, but if you can, we could follow afterwards. You could begin.
You can see it there on the screen yet?
We're seeing the first slide, so yes, we can. You could go ahead.
Okay, nice. Okay, great. Okay, so a pleasant good afternoon again. Mr. Daniel Jackson from Cardi. So the presentation that I was charged with is entitled Disaster Preparedness, Crops Open Field and Protective System, Strength Open Field Cropping System Against Extreme Weather, Protective Structures, Climate Smart Solution for Resilient Farming. Now, disaster preparedness and adequate open fields and protective system involves, firstly, basically protective measures to minimize the impact of meteorological disasters such as hurricanes and floods and drought on crops. And this really include early warning system. Early warning system are very paramount to farmers and other stakeholders. Timing is very important so as to allow farmers to be able to make concrete and very meaningful decision as it relates to actions to optimize yield and to minimize losses on their farm, and primarily take into consideration things to optimize planting, harvesting, and irrigation timing, and also pest and disease outbreak and control and overall farm management. So all the ones is very important. Additionally, the meteorological disaster prevention strategies, technologies are important as well, and strengthening open field cropping system. Many of the photos and things that I have incorporated in this presentation were primarily taken from Cardi Field Station in Stevenson and Grenadines. Cardi Field Station in Stevenson and Grenadines as a research station is being used as a model for climate resilience within the country and as a platform for the training of farmers, extension officers, and other stakeholders. So in light of that, we have practical information that we can share in that regard. Now, developing an early warning system and information dissemination is very, very paramount to help farmers to be able to mitigate and to optimize, mitigate losses and to optimize their crop yield. So to be able to predict and alert farmers for weather forecast is very important, and we have tools such as the ICT tools, as you can see, the radio, the television, the computer, etc. But equally important too is extension agents, because many farmers might not have access to many of these ICT tools. So one-to-one contact or group session are very important to meet farmers where they are, to disseminate information to many of them in that regard. So that becomes very, very important. Now, what can we do in order to strengthen open field cropping systems? We have to implement climate smart agriculture practices to increase resilience to extreme weather conditions. And firstly, what we have to do, we have to diversify our enterprises. And as you can see, we have crops that are very, as you would say, resistant. They can stand up to high wind because they have been grown on the ground. For example, aroids like cashew, tanya, edos, yams, and you can see that some corn that can be grown at the top. And also we have peanuts, which are very resilient as well, and cassava. Coming out of the recent
Can I,
episode.
excuse me,
Yeah.
we're not seeing the slides that you're
Oh, you're
referring
not seeing the
to.
slide?
It's still on the first slide.
Oh, wow,
I'm not sure if you can take us there to where you are now.
um Janice, Janice, 1 minute, please. That's I'm surprised not seeing it. So you're not moving. The slide is not moving. I've been a problem here. They say they're not seeing the slide. I know they only seen the first slide. This one. So if you could I was trying to go to the second one there while they were not moving after that. You have to do money or something. You see the second slide?
Hi, no, we're not seeing the second slide. We're still seeing only the first one. Can you click on the second one? And then I think it changed and we should then be good. You have to manually change to the slides at this point.
Go back to slides over here.
Okay, great. Now we're seeing it.
Oh, no, we're seeing it.
Right, thank you.
It's taken a while to.
Oh, it took time to upload. Which slide are you actually seeing? The first one there?
This slide, the slide entitled, well, it says
that
involves 1, proactive measure, 2, disinclude. That's what the
Okay,
slide.
right, okay. Right,
Okay.
so that is always
Okay, but they see in your note side.
it's in a no slide.
Yes, they see in your note side.
So we have to
Let's reshare.
let's give me a minute. Let me just reshare. Let me just reshare. Sorry for that. Let me just reshare the information there.
This is your slide.
This is the slide there. So let's reshare that slide. Begin it. Right, so I think it was the first one. Yeah, put my manually. This one minute, maybe just share it there. I mean, please, I have limited technical difficulties. So which one are you going in this one here?
Yes.
Yeah, that is one there. So share. Right. Still that copy, right? So that is one. So I'm going to go manually inside of it.
Yeah. Yes.
Which slide are you actually seeing right now? Hello?
First slide. Hi. Yes, we're seeing the first slide again.
What is the second slide,
Perhaps
please?
just go ahead. Just go ahead. We'll follow.
You're seeing the second slide?
Yes, now we're seeing the second slide.
Okay, okay, I've done that manually. I'll do it manually. No, you have to back cycle, see, see, because,
You can just click.
okay, just press forward.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, right. So as I was at the point where I was speaking about the different in terms of the strategies that can be utilized in terms of the early warning system and the meteorological disaster prevention and things of that sort. So right, so that's been said. Janice, I think something went wrong into him. What did you just type and say what was it?
To go to the next
Yeah,
slide.
yeah, yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, all right, okay. Right, so
Click on it.
yeah, yeah, okay, okay, good, okay, good. Right, so then we had reached the point where we're talking about the different system for informing farmers as it relates to information. And we spoke about the ICT and also the extension agents that are very important in the dissemination of information. And then we were speaking about the cropping system as it relates to variety in terms of having different crops, a mixture of different crops, and in terms of risk of spreading your risk over a wider enterprise base, so to speak. And then we also look at the strengthening open field cropping system. One of the soil and water conservation practices in terms of contour drains and grass barriers, mulching, cover crops are very important in that regard. And we have some photos there you can see on the right side in terms of prevention of erosion, water retention, and mitigate drought and flood damages to that extent. Now we also look at the protecting the crops and infrastructure. One of the important things that we have to take into consideration is the establishment of windbreak. In that sense, especially to the side of the country, we have the prevailing winds are very strong. And research have shown that windbreak tend to play a significant role in reducing the velocity of the wind and also reducing the soil being dried out in that sense. But in terms of wind speed, wind breaks play a crucial part. In terms of greenhouses, we see that protecting your seedlings depend upon the category of the weather forecast, the weather that you are facing is very important because if the seedlings are exposed to the direct rain, that you can eventually have a high rate of mortality, and that can prevent you from actually have your crop being established and result in loss of important financial resources. And your crop being grown in a protective environment in terms of your blossoms and other things are not being impacted heavily. So those are very crucial things that we have to take into consideration in that regard. Equally important too is that during storms, depending on the category of the storm, sometimes you can have a disruption to the water system. And as a result, you need to have some form of storage so at least you can able to irrigate your crops or water your plants until there's a period of safety where you can continue to do your open field operation. So water storage is of critical importance in that sense, because you might want to do some spraying operation, the water might not return maybe for a couple of days and so forth. So you still have access to water that you can have from your storage facility. And also to do your fertigation application, apply nutrients to your water to feed the crop is very, very, very important. So all in all, in summing up, that the information transfer and the adoption of practices, of climate smart practices, like your different types of crops being grown, your contour drains, your grass barriers, your mulching, your water storage facilities, and also such things as your protection of your cotton crops are very, very important. So that's bring me to the end of my presentation here. Hello? Hello?
Yes, thank you. Thank
Yes.
you very much. We have two comments, but
Yeah.
let's proceed. I'd like to call now on Mr. St. Martin. And
Okay. Half of the city that is sinking.
hi,
Port
hi.
Royal is the wickedest city on earth. Yeah, wickedest city.
Excuse me.
Everything evil took place. Hey, see, someone come check it.
Hi. Yes. So, Mr. Cheney St. Martin, he's from AICA. He will now be presenting for us. He is a specialist in water and soil management.
Yeah,
So, Mr. St. Martin, time
yeah.
is yours.
There is someone
Once you
talking
get
and
the
need to
festival,
mute the mic.
nothing else can bother. You know, festival that taste anyway you buy festival not taste good like one hand.
Mr. Sean, mute your mic.
It's like a
We don't need to
different
hear
taste.
your conversation. Mr. Sean, mute your mic.
Which one? Russian?
Right. Could I go ahead, colleagues?
Sure.
Yes, the time is yours. Thank you. Go
No
ahead.
problem. Thank you very much. Again, good day. Just wanted to present very quickly on some very important facts. In fact, there's a lot that could be covered. We definitely cannot cover everything there, but I felt it was necessary to pinpoint certain things that are perhaps not the regular information that is out there. First of all, I want to acknowledge a very important source. I saw a very good publication from the Caribbean Policy Development Center. I would encourage everybody to get it, mainly because it does not only present the information, but it presents it in a way that is very palatable with supporting photos. And so a lot of the photos and information, then it also presents what I call a practitioner's angle in a very succinct way. So I'll definitely encourage you all to, it's a good start. I'm hoping that perhaps the next step could be to translate it into a video format. So I wanted to touch on this particular point here. One of the things I was asked to speak about is really what are some of the global best practices as it relates to the crop selection, farm design, etc. And I want to overlay that with two main things, both from the practitioner side and also evidence-based. What we are seeing from both practice and also from the literature is that a farming system that has these key elements are really foundational and really positions itself in a manner that we could deal with some of the extreme events and we can meet most of the objectives of the farm. So I'm talking about one, minimum soil disturbance, which we refer to in the literature and in practice as no-till or low-till. There must be an element that looks at organic matter. Again, we know about the organic matter, but we're talking specifically about stabilized or stable organic matter, not just any organic matter. We know the benefits of that. Again, that cropping or that system must have or should have mulch and also some aspect of cover crops that we could see is very important in terms of conserving some of the water and creating a microenvironment. And obviously, we speak about the crop diversification with specific rotations for the Caribbean and other places, depending on the season. We won't have time to go in all of it here, but I will mention some. And we are seeing what is also critical is the aspect of liming, irrigating, and fertilization. So if we remember anything going forward, whether it's for the disaster preparedness or just to have a resilient farm, these are the critical practices, what we call the foundational practices that you should have in your checklist to really evaluate how are you setting up your farm in a way that will allow you to be resilient. I wanted to extend it a little bit here. That is not only the issue. The issue, if you look at that and you say, well, now we have the foundational practice, you must also consider the issue of your farm design. And there are some guiding principles, and I have it there as 4. Most persons or farmers, they design for the market. what we are seeing is that a resilient farm that is ready for the disaster, etc., or that is ready for the natural hazard, they should have in that design the issue of, yes, for market, yes, for family. That's the subsistent level that we had traditionally here. For your reserves, what are you reserving or keeping back? And for nature, naturally, nature will consume, whether it's through pests, etc. You should have these at least 4 pillars in your head when you're designing your space. I'll just give an example of what that goes into. So, for example, if you have a farm, all of what you're seeing here is your outskirts, and this is what we are not seeing a lot. There are some fundamental things that you should try to, on your perimeter of your farm, or whether it is patches in between your farm, you should have some key crops there. Again, you should have crops. That is where you could put your farm reserves. What are you reserving for the next cycle? What are you actually having there? The energy crops there as well. What are you having there for the family? You could actually do that on your perimeter. So your perimeter now constitutes a combination of, yes, the windbreaks if necessary, but also that is where you could start storing some of the seeds, the specialized varieties that you have. You would want things like a root crop there. You'd want something like banana also there. You may want something like a tree crop or several tree crops right on that perimeter. And you definitely want something for the native flowers. So these are some of the things that I would consider a must-have, particularly for the tropics, whether you're in protected or open field. The native flower and the grasses, specifically, you really want them to encourage your pollinators. That's very important, and specifically for open production. You want the moringa there. The moringa somewhere there would allow for particularly water. Moringa has that quality that it could help purify the water, or segregate the dust particles. So that's very important, along with the other things that the moringa could do, particularly after you have that disaster situation. Then the issue of water quality, both for consumption and also irrigation, becomes very important. You would want to have these energy crops, the root crops, the cassava, etc., within your farm there. A lot of mistakes that we have learned, and we've learned that, is most persons now, when you have the disaster, persons think of planting leafy vegetables, etc. What you want is that core energy that again connects directly to the nutrition, your calories, your energy. You want to have that reserve there. Yes, the vegetables are important for their livelihood, but in terms of sustenance and a healthy diet, the root crops, these energy crops, are fundamental in designing that kind of resilience that we are talking about. The mango tree, very important in creating micro environments. Again, probably just a preference of mine here, but it's very, very good to actually have that within your landscape for the fruits and also that rigidity that you're expecting. And the neem, most of what you see happening with the neem, perhaps even continue 2 years after the disaster, you see an increase of pest and disease. So again, you have that neem as something there that could allow you to use it and to develop some biopesticides to actually use it. I've included some of the cover crops on the screen there. Very important, like I said, as part of the foundational practices. You'll see we have velvet bean, excellent here. We have sun hemp. We also have one that is less known called the forage soybean, which is mainly for the forage. Again, I think when we look at it now, when we're looking at resilient systems, there is obviously a time to rethink what really a weed is and how we could actually use it. I wanted to jump into the extremes that we are talking about, the hazards that we are talking about. The key one is the extreme rainfall. When you're talking about rainfall and water, you want to get the water out. You design your system to get the water out. But there are some mistakes that are being made. For example, we recommend that you use a step drain as opposed to just a full flowing drain. That is something that I think is very useful. What about the answer between a wide drain or deep drain? Again, the wide drain is better, and we could go into that into the question and answer. And we also look at how you actually drain it. Most persons tend to drain on one side of the bed, and so a lot of the water goes in there. Draining on the other side, both sides are actually a better option, a better practice as we go forward here. I wanted to jump into the drought. One of the fundamental things I see with the drought and water management generally is that there is no sense of how much water is actually needed. A quick fix to that, quote unquote, is in designing your irrigation system, it makes sense to put a meter in the system so you could get a sense of how much water that you're using. Why? Because if you get a sense of how much water that you're irrigating with, then you get a sense of how much water you will need at a particular time, and that will inform the designing of your water storage, etc. Because again, in drought, because the water table is very low, you want to plant in flat beds as opposed to raised beds. If you raise them, the root will be further away from the water, so you have more of a challenge. And obviously, you want to cover. You want to cover to trap that moisture in, but it's not only the bed. You will find great benefits if you are actually also mulch the drains as well to keep that cover and to keep that water inside. I wanted to go quickly to reducing the impacts of wind, and that's my last slide, I think. I think one of the important things there is we definitely need to have this windbreak, but we also need to know how does that relate to the protection zone and how do you actually design your farm. If you have a particular length of tree, let's say 20 feet, your protection area most times is 10 or 20 by this, meaning that it will provide that wind protection just about, let's say 20 feet by 10, that's 200 feet away from that windbreak. And so this is where you may want to locate your greenhouses there to get into that protection space. And this is where you may want to select and put certain crops that needs that protection closer to that zone, or reestablish another windbreak after that length or that expanse. One of the critical things to in managing the windbreak is the issue of pruning. The mistake I see persons do is that they actually think that a taller tree, the taller the tree could get, the more protection. No, there is a ratio between the load that a taller tree creates because to the root system and versus one that is just a particular height. So you want to keep your trees more or less 20 feet, 25 feet. You also want to prune it in such a way that the branches do not cross each other. When it cross each other, that means you're creating a barrier there, meaning that all of the wind is actually knocking at it, and you have you compromise the windbreak, so to speak. So colleagues, I wanted to just leave these with you as just some quick points. I'm hoping that perhaps in the discussion, we could go a little further into the details. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you so much, Mr. Jackson. I must say, combined all three presentations, they were excellent, and we do have some comments, and we have a couple questions. What one of our persons online is asking for the source for Mr. Jackson. If you could place in the chat the source of your presentation, that would be useful. As well, regarding
So, just repeat, clarify.
Sorry.
Just clarify that, please. You mean the source where they can access the presentation?
Yes, I believe that is it. Yes.
Okay.
Also, there's a question about the raised bed, asking whether that's to combat flooding. So that would go to Mr. St. Martin, if you would elaborate a little bit there before we move on to our last speaker.
Yes, so the raised beds are normally used to combat the flood. Not combat, I don't like the word combat, but it's one of the practices that you would use. Generally, what you have is when it's dry, you want to go lower or flatter. When it's wet, you want to debate the beds higher. And that really has to do with not only the physical water that will be there, but also the regulating effect that it has on the water table in terms of how close the water table is to the plants. So the higher you do it during the floods, the less that you have it directly there in the water table where you have an oversaturation that might lead to other problems. Over.
Thank you for that, for elaborating there. Thank you very much. Without much further ado, let's hear from Miss Deandra Rowe. The time is yours.
Hello. Can you hear me? Hello?
Very clear, thank you. And we're seeing you too. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. So my name is Deandra. I'm a greenhouse farmer in Manchester, Jamaica, and I'll just be sharing a little bit about my experience. In July 2020, well, I've been farming full-time for 10 years now. So I would have experienced quite a number of storms, and I would have experienced the passage of Hurricane Beryl that happened July of 2024. So I'll just be sharing some of the things that we did at our location in preparation for the hurricane. I'm now sharing from my phone, so hopefully you'll be able to see. I did put together just some videos and some pictures on a slide in a PowerPoint presentation to share with you, and afterwards I'll elaborate. So it's basically just to show you like one and two of the things that we would have done and basically the aftermath of the hurricane. Sorry. Share screen. Okay. So basically, let me speak in the meantime. Before I even get to considering preparation for a hurricane, it is important to think of your greenhouse structure and your design. When erecting your greenhouse, you should consider where it will be placed. It's always best to construct your greenhouse in an area where it's protected from heavy wind and it's not prone to flooding. If the area is prone to flooding, I suggest that you dig trenches around the greenhouse. Trenches around the greenhouse to help to channel the water away from the structure. I also suggest that you select durable materials or weather-resistant frame materials such as galvanized steel over constructing your greenhouse with wood and plastic. Also consider using locking profiles to secure plastic and insect screens to greenhouse frames for faster and easier removal and reinstallation. As it relates to the things that we did in preparation for the hurricane or for hurricane season, we normally lower our mesh or the insect screen on the sides of the greenhouse. So that mesh is basically buried at the foot of the greenhouse. So we basically just roll the mesh down and then use weighted objects to keep the mesh in place. It's also recommended that you remove the plastic from the top of your structures, or if you can't remove it, like in our case, our farm is pretty big. We have a little over 2 acres worth of greenhouse space, and to remove all of that infrastructure and take down all of that plastic and insect screening, it was near impossible for us, along with all the other activities that we had to do. So I am suggesting that if you can't remove it, cut it. Based on my experience, just cut it. We found that all of the houses that we thought were sturdy, right, and would withstand the hurricane, the newest house is the most severely damaged house on our property. It was a total write-off, because what happens is that when you have those tight plastics stretched on the roof, and yes, the house may seem sturdy, it doesn't allow for the wind to basically pass through, right? So what it does is it twists all of the infrastructure. So it's better for you to lose the plastic and the mesh than to lose the structure itself. So I would recommend cutting all of the plastic, all of the mesh. If you don't have time to take it down, just cut it. It will cost you less in the long run. Speaking from my experience, as we've had over $40 million of damage to our structures, 40 million Jamaican dollars. That's how much damage we had as a result of Hurricane Beryl. So a number of the structures we did not, for some of them, the ones that we realized that we did cut the plastic on because we thought that they were not as sturdy and they wouldn't withstand the hurricane, all of those are fine. All of those structures are fine. As it relates to your farm surroundings, we're suggesting that you remove all projectile, anything that can blow around in the wind and cause any damage. Your valuable things, for us, our farm operates off of solar. We did try to secure them as best as possible, but with the amount of things that we have to do, it was near impossible to do everything perfectly. So we lost a third of our solar capacity. And I realized that the panels that blew off, we lost probably like 16 panels. Those panels that we lost were the panels that were slightly tilted. They were not flat. So even though we had strapped them down, we left that space, that little gap for the wind to come and tilt them over. So I'm suggesting anything valuable. Right now we have a new greenhouse which operates using evaporative cooling. For this hurricane season, or if there is a serious hurricane threat, we plan to remove all of the fans, all of the wet walls, anything that is very valuable. It's best to just remove it. It's important also to cut down all trees in close proximity to your structures. Cut down all the trees. Make sure you fill up all of your water tanks to avoid them being tossed around or being damaged. For us on our farm, we know that we were going to get damaged. It was unavoidable. The magnitude of the hurricane that we had, we know we would have some damage, but what I did was to ensure that we could start producing again immediately. I moved all of our seedlings, all of our trays, everything indoors. Be sure to stock up on all your seeds, your fertilizers, and pesticides and insecticides, as those things tend to be short immediately after a hurricane. And it's very important to make sure that you have your chemicals, because after you would have taken off your mesh and your roof, your plants would be exposed now to the different elements, right? So now you'll have to treat for any insects that would have entered your growing space, right? Any fungus that you might have. So spraying is important. So it's always good to stock up on those items. As it really relates to caring for your mature plants inside your greenhouse space, for all the plants that we would have on trellis, we would take those off and lower them, allow them to lie flat on the ground, and then you'd cover those plants with whatever plastic you would have removed from your roof, if you removed any, so that they don't get too much water damage. So those are some of the things that you can do. In addition, it would be wise to reap all of your mature fruits, ripe and unripe, once they're mature, to just harvest them. And if you have a storage, store them. It's also good for greenhouse farming. Most of our operation is automated. We were able to, as I said, we have solar systems in place. So we were able to bounce back rather quickly. Apart from 90% of the structures being damaged, we were able to get back into production immediately. So we had stuff to sell faster than a number of other farmers. So it's important for you to, it's important for you to have some kind of storage, invest in a generator if possible. So whatever you store, you can sell. And yes, I think that's it for what we've done. I will now try to share my screen. I was unsuccessful at first. So you can see some of what we would have, preparations we would have made. Can you see?
No, we are not seeing anything. Only your,
You can see?
seeing you. We're only seeing you.
Oh, hold on. My laptop decided to crash as the Zoom meeting started, so now I'm trying to operate from my phone. Um, share screen, start now. Can you see my screen now?
No, we're still not seeing anything. Only you.
Okay, well, I guess we'll have to just wrap the pictures and stuff for this presentation. Because as I said, I'm operating from my phone and I don't know how to get it up. Basically, what I wanted to show you guys was just a little bit of the prep. We had videos of us basically cutting the plastic, and it would basically show you the difference between all of the panels that were laying flat opposed to all those that were slightly mounted. As I said, we lost all the ones that were strapped down. They were strapped down, but they were slightly mounted. I wanted to show you guys our entire nursery indoors and stuff like that, but yes, it's not working, so we can move on.
All right. Thank you so much, Deandra, and thank you for sharing your experience with us. It's very useful information. Just to go to our comments that we've been receiving so far. We've had someone ask on Facebook, with the greenhouse to be insured, it has to be of high quality and with high grade materials. I guess that's a comment more than a question. Also, a comment, we need to incorporate climate modeling tools to look at future projections to better advise farmers on what to expect in the near future. That is from Daniel Uplal. Also, his comment continues, integrating tree crops in a multi-cropping system like coconut, breadfruit, etc., with a deep taproot system as wind breaks. So those are his comments and feedback as we had our presenters. Also online there is a question. Let's see. I lost it just now, but just give me 1 second. So another comment from Daniel is that the goal is to ensure to choose tree crops with deep taproot systems that can anchor, especially as wind breaks. So these are additional tips and comments in his comments. You can also find in the chat a link to the ccrif.org that was shared. That's in regards to the training manual presented for small farmers. Also, we have a question here. It says, what type of early warning system do we have in place? And do we find it sufficient? This is a question I am going to direct to both Cardi and Aika, if we can answer this question. What type of early warning systems do we have in place, and do we find it sufficient?
Well, from a Cardi perspective, in terms of Sylvester and Grenadines, they have an all-in-one system where that they have NEMO, National Emergency unit that primarily issued forecasts when there are pending systems, tropical systems. That being said, I think that there are much more needed to be done because sometimes the farmers, when these things have been issued, many farmers may not have access to a telephone to get real-time information, and many might not be listening to a radio because of the different communication platform that are now currently available. In the past, you used to have one main communication medium, that used to be radio. Now you have a multiplicity of different communication medium. So I think what is really needed is that the extension agent within the Ministry of Agriculture and even within the themselves as well, if once they have important one as such as this, they need to have, if there's a weak, short notice in terms of only warning system, there's a need for persons to come in the communities where and organize like farmers meeting so that they can share in real time the information, because if in terms of farmers, there's no information sharing specifically to farmers. The information have been shared in terms of all the warning system is generally is for the general public consumption and not directed at farmers per se. So there's a need for upgrade in that regard. And what the other thing about, again, to sometimes the way the message is being crafted, you know, that there's need for targeted intervention tailored specifically for farmers in that sense, you know, and so that at least you could have information reach them in a timely fashion.
Denise?
Yeah, maybe I could jump in. Colleagues. Just before, I just wanted to share that the CIMH, that is the Caribbean, that CIMH is there, and CIMH has provided a lot of services. I just put the link inside of there. CIMH have done a wonderful job, and obviously they're always trying to improve. But CIMH has provided information in terms of both long-term, medium, short-term climate bulletins, what to expect, the number of dry days to expect, the number of rainy days to expect. All of these things, CIMH has done a very good job at great resolution too, and they continue to try to do that. So that information is actually there. There's a climate bulletin that is specific for agriculture. There's actually some notice, particularly in Antigua and Barbuda, where you have that kind of podcast or that information being shared. The critical point is, how is that information being used by the farmers, etc. I am convinced that as of now, the services and the information that is there, you could actually use it for both long-term and medium-term, short-term planning, so that you know how to design and what is actually coming, and design your interventions, so to speak. So I have put the link in the chat there so that persons could perhaps just look at it and see the range of information that CIMH provides. Over.
Denise, it's Ralph here. I've also added a link for a very effective real-time wind and precipitation app called Wind Guru. If you want to see real-time, wind speeds, precipitation, you can use that app. We find it very effective. Anytime, there's a hurricane threat announced, you just kind of track it there, and it will give you very accurate information in real time. So I also just wanted to comment on the previous speaker's situation. I'm very, very sorry to hear about what happened in Jamaica through Beryl. I've got a couple of pictures to show you quickly. This is one of the farms up near the wind farm in Jamaica. Another, fairly large. I think he had about 23,000 square feet of greenhouses here. And this is what the farm looked like prior to Beryl. And this is what it looked like after Beryl. So the comments that the speaker made about preparing these types of, lower tech greenhouses for hurricanes were very clear and poignant, and I'm sure she learned a lot. Removing the membrane is a huge thing. Obviously, you're going to lose your crop, so if you can scramble and try to get your crop harvested and protected somehow. But I'm just showing you evidence of a real-time farm in Jamaica and what Beryl did to them, which was really unfortunate.
Indeed. So thank you. Anyone would like? All right. So we have comment here from Instagram. It says, "Do you recommend Hayugul culture?" I'm not sure what that is, but apparently this is something related. I'm not sure if you're familiar. If any of our panelists would like to comment, do they know of it and what it is, and is it something to recommend?
Dennis, I didn't hear the
Yeah, repeat
terminology.
Hayugulkulture. It's a German word.
I'm not familiar with it, Dennis.
Oh, okay, understand. Anyone else? No? All right. Search that. So I guess that's something to research and to investigate on. We also have another comment here. Seems you have individual excellent resources and could develop a regional resource manual. Excellent presentations. Indeed. So my question I have for the panel here, we've heard about experiences, we've been receiving a lot of information. Can each of you, in 3 pointers, summarize takeaways for our audience today? I mean, there's so much you've presented, there's so many things, but those 3 points, briefly, 3 points that you want your audience to take away today. Anyone can start.
Well, what I want to say, most importantly, timing is very, very crucial. As all of them say, a stitch in time save 9, and prevention is better than cure. And if we take all necessary actions early and act on information received, then we are ahead of the curve in able to help to alleviate and mitigate the hazards. So timing is very important. The other important thing too is of importance is finance. Finance is very critical in all of this. If you want to do the necessary changes and make resilience on the farm, finance become very, very, very crucial. And thirdly, I think there is a need for the state and the stakeholders to have some sort of collaboration, ongoing collaboration, ongoing meeting, in that sense, to be able to have a common ground, common understanding, in able to address the issue of disasters.
Thank you. Who's next?
Yeah, from my standpoint, in terms of protected agriculture and using, greenhouses, hoop houses, shade houses, this region, we're in a hurricane region, and unfortunately, the farmers in Jamaica, when I spoke to a lot of them a few years ago, they said, you know what, we haven't had a hurricane in a long time, and then all of a sudden, Beryl came along. It's going to happen. So you need to plan and you need to engineer for the worst case scenario, all risk mitigation, right? So you heard Deandra talk about her solar farm, providing power to a farm, so redundant power, mitigating against flood threat, having extra water resources to mitigate against drought. And you can engineer a greenhouse to be hurricane resistant if you're using the right systems. With that comes commercial insurability. So in the worst case scenario, if a storm hits and it does some damage to your greenhouse, that you're insured and you can rebuild it. Those are the lessons that we've learned. Engineer it properly. The technology exists. Better to pay now than to pay a lot more later.
Perhaps I could jump in here. So, colleagues, for those of us that have actually been on the ground and going through these countries when these things happen, we understand that there's a point where nothing can be done. In terms of what I mean by that is that the power of nature up to that point has superseded our adaptation capacity. So that is a real thing, right? We are suggesting some of these things, and I'm saying this particularly to put forward that protect your life is one of the first things. Protect life and limb, etc. is very important before we speak about protecting some of these assets. So that's one of the things I want to have very clear there. The second thing I think is very useful is, I think, aligning the thinking or the farming, whatever farming system that you have, with the existing framing for disaster risk management is very important. And what I'm speaking about is simply a three-pronged thing. How do we prepare? How do we respond? How do we recover? I think that is very important. The reason why I'm saying that, again, when it happens, this is the framework that the policymakers, the funders, etc., are accustomed to. And the farmers, if they're already ready, they're able to go forward with that. We have seen, again, through lessons, everybody becomes a farmer after a hurricane, mainly because whether they plant one tree, one plant, they're a farmer because they want to benefit from what is being offered. So one very short practice is, before the hurricane season is on now, why not start inventorizing what you have on the farm? So when it comes to the damage and loss, that is already there. You could always update it. You could use a fly-along drone from your daughter, whoever it is. That's one thing that you want to do to solidify that it is there. The last thing I wanted to say there is the farm design is very important. It really starts off there as well. One of the things about the greenhouse is that we didn't touch on a bit. The presenter did, but one of the things, it's not only the wind load, it is what is actually there that is being picked up and slammed into the structure. And we have seen that in Dominica, where you have containers literally on greenhouses or wrapped around greenhouses or vice versa. And so that point is very, very important. The last thing for us is that the hazards, the specific hazards, whether it's the drought, etc., what we really want to build is an adaptable mindset. The things that you have to actually change that mindset, where you could get the information and, using the different principle, adjust to your context. That is very, very important. So I want to leave the audience with that important message. It's not the system that is adaptable. It is the mind that you have to get adaptable to create the systems. Thank you.
Deandra, your final words?
Yes. While it's very important for us to do what we can as it relates to preparation, but it's also important not to stress yourself too much about it. Sometimes you prepare, and the preparation that you make, no matter what you thought the outcome would have been, it's really and truly up to God what will happen. So just do the best that you can. Think about how you will rebuild afterwards. As it relates to the preparations, as I said, if it's your structures, you don't have the manpower to help you to get the netting down and the mesh and stuff like that, just cut the plastic, lose the mesh. The most expensive part of your greenhouse is the structure, the frame, right? So even though our damage was so extensive, For a number of the houses that we just went through and cut the plastic, we found that the structural damage was minimal to those houses. And as a result, and even the material that we use, because we use only galvanized pipe, right? We were able to remove a number of those hoops and stuff like that and run them back through the machine, straighten them out and bend them again. So it's very important for you to consider these steps when you're sure that the hurricane is coming, because I remember in 1 year, they told us that a storm was coming, and I had bell peppers that I was supposed to harvest in the upcoming week. And I decided that, oh, I don't want the plants to be battered and stuff like that. And I went through and I removed everything off of the trellis, and no storm came. The destruction, it was, I should have just left it, because all of the branches, peppers, they snap under pressure. The amount of work to put all of those pepper plants back up and stuff like that, it was just too much. So sometimes you just have to let nature take its course, to be honest. And that was what we had to do. As I said, our operation is very large and manpower was limited at the time. So we only did what we could. Secure the projectiles, right? Fill your water tanks and stuff like that. Cut whatever plastic you can cut and bring your young seedlings inside. Make sure you secure your insecticides, fungicides, and stuff like that. So when the storm has passed, you can get back into production as soon as possible.
Great, thank you. So be proactive, prepare, and make sure you plan, right? Plan and prepare. All right, so I want to thank you all. We also just want to note here before we go that we have from Mr. St. Martin, he placed in there a platform and a repository where he's encouraging you to go and where we could continue the details of this discussion. So it's the link is https://ccraf.iica.int/. So if you're interested, you could click there and you can continue to look out for their CCRAF. Perhaps I should ask Mr. Martin to explain that.
Yes.
Yes, so go
Probably I
ahead.
could comment. Colleagues, we have had this forum for about 10 years now, where we provide these quarterly sessions on specific topics like that. We will be having a topic on that to go into greater details, and more so, we will be actually visiting the countries to have hands-on practice with the farmers and with the communities there. So just look out for it. It's called the CCRAF, which is the Caribbean Climate Responsive Agriculture Forum. And we'll be launching our CCRAF on the road, where we come to you and actually assist you in building the skills necessary. Thank you.
All right, great. Last comment I saw here, it's about livestock, but guess what? Come back next week and we will have that discussion, right? So thank you for joining us today for today's session in preparing for the 2025 Caribbean Hurricane Season webinar series. We did have a great time, and we hope to I hope that you found some very useful information that you can share with others. You can use it for your own preparation, your own disaster prepared plan, and that indeed you will take the experiences that was shared today and take it seriously. And we have a lot to learn, but we learn from each other, right? So special thanks to our partner agencies, SEDIMA, CAFSA, CARDI, CRFM, FAO, of course, AICA. We all want to thank you and thank you for your continued collaboration and commitment to building resilience in our region. And to our presenters, your valuable contributions is unspoken. So we encourage you to continue to when we call, be able to help join in this conversation and bring light to the region on this matter. We appreciate all the questions and comments we've received. They're noted and they're being taken on board. The recording of this session will be available check out CARICOM's YouTube channel and you'll find it there. We look forward to having you with us again. As I said, same time, same place next week. And we'll be looking at livestock. So let's have that discussion about how do we prepare our livestock at that time. So thank you once again and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks, same to you.